investors, Airbnb experts, people who have a vested interest in how to increase your profits, increase your occupancy rates, and make more money using short-term letting, perhaps like Airbnb, Booking.com, Vrbo, or perhaps looking for a creative way to fire your boss. And perhaps I actually should have mentioned that as the title for today. What you need to do to fire your boss and how long will it take? Because that's exactly what we're kind of discussing, opening up is that possibility and that insight. And today I'm going to spend time talking to some people who are on that journey or have done that process, which is how do they become financially independent and fire their boss? And what's great about it is it lands on today, Freedom Day. And here in South Africa, 27th of April, it means so much for different people. And my interpretation in this space of the property business and in SAPN is for us to look at the financial freedom aspect. And financial freedom has many different terms and words for different people. For most people, we'd probably say that financial freedom is the ability to choose to do the things that they want, the time freedom to do it in, the people freedom to do it with, and the funds to do it. And for many people, that is financial freedom. And some of them might be referring to a time frame or a certain amount of money. Like if I said to you right now, how much money would you need to be able to fire your boss and to live as comfortably as you are now, or at some point that you feel would be appropriate or you would be ideal, maybe not ideal, but would be okay for you to fire your boss and be on your own? And that amount varies. I've worked with people that say 25,000 Rand a month. If they could just clear that as a replacement of their salary, that would be amazing. For some people, it's 50, others it's 80, others it's 100. Some that I've worked with are over 250,000 a month net of all the other expenses that they've got. It means significantly something different, this concept of financial freedom. So in this conversation today, I'm going to build it into that context, which is the different ways that you can create that financial freedom in property from a traditional perspective to a more modern one are very varied. And I really do believe, and I haven't come across anything else, any different model than the short-term letting space, that Airbnb and Booking.com and the strategies that we apply to replace your salary in such a short amount of time and to be well on your way to financial freedom, as opposed to the traditional ways of doing real estate investing, where you're buying a property, hopefully you're not going to pay in, wait for maybe 5 to 6 years of working hard to pay your bond. And remember, for many people, you're working hard, if it's coming into your name, are paying after tax money to pay for that property. There's a whole lot of different things that come into play that slow down your growth and acceleration. And today I'm going to be speaking to two people who have used Airbnb to change how they're approaching their businesses, to change their lives, and are well on their ways to financial freedom. This is also an opportunity for you to speak to the experts here. I am available for you to share any answers, insights that you've got. And my two guests are also experts in both the Booking.com, Airbnb, and actually in varying businesses that tie into Airbnb. And this is a great opportunity for you to ask. We will answer any question that you put here. So you've got an opportunity to get free insights, free advice, free coaching. This is an opportunity, but my drive in this space is to plant that seed that if you really are wanting to change your life to something that you feel you deserve, to access that level of at least income and profits in a short amount of time to what you feel you're wanting and also deserve, then this is definitely the conversation for you. And I want to plant that as a possibility to see that this could really happen. So at this moment, I'm going to bring in some of my colleagues, actually. We've got Ridwan, we've also got Bruce. And Bruce and Ridwan, great to have you with us. You've actually both been on these talks, this time slot with us, and you both shared your stories. But today the angle is slightly different, because although we are sharing insights and comments about Airbnb and Booking.com, you both have a very strong drive and passion to see how this not only contributes to your financial worth and wealth later on. And we know that that resonates with many people, because for them, financial wealth for some of their timelines, it's I want to be able to retire at 50, 60, 70 and have financial wealth. But for some of us, that's too far away. We don't want to wait 20 years till we retire. We want this quicker. We want less risk. We want to see how to maximize our time now and our leverage now and actually make something work. And that's where I'm more interested in. How do we do this quicker, more efficient, faster than some of the traditional models? So it's great to have you on board here. And I'm actually going to open up the conversation to you before we get into the financial freedom component and firing your boss topic. I'm really interested in hearing more about, well, what are you seeing in the market now? What are you seeing in your listings from where you're at as to what's going on? And maybe I should just also share, and I think both of you saw that as well in some of our groups. We saw that there was a rating about what are the top Airbnb destinations in the world. And we had South Africa, Cape Town as, I think, the third or the fourth. So it just shows that South Africa has that potential, because even though I'm based mostly in Cape Town, we know that if someone does go to Cape Town to visit, they're going to go to other parts of the country as well. So everyone does benefit. So they can't just say, oh, Cape Town's the only one that benefits. We know that those same guests that go to Cape Town have to go somewhere else as well. And we know Bruce takes advantage of that because Bruce isn't in Cape Town yet, even though that I reckon in a few weeks' time, we'll definitely see him there. So Ridwan and Bruce, I'm going to open up to you. Bruce, maybe let's just tap into you first. Like, what are you seeing at the moment in the Airbnb market and the trends in your listings? Then we'll go to Ridwan, and then I'm going to ask you the question. So how long till someone can fire their boss? So Bruce, over to you. What are you seeing at the moment in the current market trends?
So thanks very much for inviting us to the chat, Robin. So for me, currently, my place is in KZN, for those of the viewers that don't know that yet. So on the Dolphin Coast, to be exact, so north coast of KZN. And I think something really interesting that came out of the trends that we noticed when we were doing the Booking.com course material is that some of the stays are tending to be slightly longer now over the winter period. We've also had a lot of vacation days right now, and booking windows becoming shorter. So historically, my booking window has always been quite long, so 30 days in advance, just about. But I have seen trends now opening up where people are booking with a shorter time frame between their stays. So 7 days, I don't allow immediate bookings. So I haven't really seen that, although there are statistics to show that immediate bookings are also something that's picking up quite considerably. So yeah, those are my insights of what's happening now. I haven't seen a slowdown in my area yet. You know, KZN is like summer all year long. So the water's nice, the sun's nice, the beaches are nice. So yeah.
So interesting out of that, and I just have a couple of comments there. I mean, I've certainly seen in Cape Town some of the areas are more slowing down into that winter period, as we know, as a slow level. But it would be good to hear from Ridwan as well. We know that he also taps into diverse markets, and we'll probably also have some comments on that. What's interesting about what you're sharing about last minute bookings, and I think I shared it a little, maybe it even was last week on this chat, was that 80% of Booking.com bookings were literally on the day or on the day before some of the bookings that happened in Cape Town, at least. That's the stats there. So you're 100% right. And actually, I target that. I now, knowing that insight and that statistic, make sure I do that. I even showed a graph. I showed people actually in our course, in the Booking.com course that Bruce, you and I recorded and we did as an expert in Booking.com. We took a hold of that content and I actually showed station live on the Booking.com screen that there's that button that we click that says, what is available now? Show me what properties are open. And in that space, I clicked that and they all disappeared except mine. And that was because I was searching for a booking that night that wasn't that everything was full, because we could see that wasn't true. It was because none of those other ones would do last minute bookings in my area. And that was a niche. I was like, well, I'm going to certainly take advantage of this. So I think you're right. And definitely my also, I guess, recommendation to you is, you know, when you get to the point where you want more money, then maybe look at those last minute bookings, because I'm very sure that that's a market that's going to be great for you. Any other comments, Bruce, before we ask Ridwan what he sees in his markets?
Also seeing a trend lately, I was actually discussing it on our mastermind group that we have bi-monthly, that people are starting to book experiences. That's something that's starting to take over in South Africa as well. We've seen it in other international markets, and people are starting to look for those things locally here in South Africa as well.
Yeah, and by experiences, I'm assuming you're meaning that the accommodation experience is part of it, or you're saying experiences as you're going to come to this place and then I'm going to go whitewater rafting.
So the accommodation actually being part of the experience, most of them also looking for some sort of packages. If you can compile for them some events, they usually ask you. So that's also something that's starting to happen here.
Yeah, I think I did share it. I know I shared it with all of you, my guests, Ridwan and Bruce, that one of my Airbnbs that I really want to do is to take like a Boeing 747 and
Yes.
place it on the cliff edge and turn that whole thing into an Airbnb. I promise you it's going to do so well. We first saw the things like tree houses and all these unique things, but tree houses now are like, well, that's yesteryear. Really interesting experiences. So you're spot on there. So what we mean by that for those listening is we're looking to see what people aren't just wanting a place to rest their head and sleep. They're looking for the actual accommodation to be part of this experience. They're looking for a uniqueness, for a theme, for some aspect which is going to add to their stay and not just be a place of accommodation. And that's what we'll definitely, we've seen it in the States. And Bruce, excellent. I'm going to come back to you just now with the question on where you're at and how that's going. Ridwan, from your side, what are you seeing, noticing in your markets?
Yeah, so thanks, Robin. Thanks, Bruce. In Cape Town, there's definitely been a slowdown in terms of the rate, right? So what I mean by that is, I don't have higher occupancy in any or lower occupancy in any of my units. However, I have had to adjust the rates down from the peak period, and that's normal for us here in Cape Town. We've got the big summer festive peak, and then from there it slows down a bit in terms of the rate that you can charge, and then it goes back up again. Now, something that I am experiencing differently for the first time this year is, as I've mentioned before, I got my first luxury villa towards the end of last year, and the rates are really varied there. So there are some days where I'm managing to charge, almost double the amount per night at certain times in the same month. And I just need to understand the analytics a bit better there with regards to why that's happening and capitalize on that. And then from my side, I've not got any of my properties on booking.com as yet. So what I will be doing shortly is, taking advantage of the new section in your course that you and Bruce have created, and putting a lot of my properties on booking.com. And I think that will substantially increase the income, because like you, I've got all my properties geared for immediate bookings. So I'll be able to take advantage of that niche that you've just mentioned as well.
So when you say in the Ridwan that you've got your properties geared for immediate bookings, you're actually sharing that you've set them up through systems, automation, that someone could literally book that day if they wanted to. Correct?
That's correct. I mean, I've had a booking, I think, at about 2 o'clock in the morning already. And I was sleeping. Somebody's booked the property, and because of the systems and automations that I've got in place that I learned from your course, Robin, that person was able to get all the check-in information and check in without me needing to do anything. So all of the properties have that immediate booking and immediate acceptance capabilities.
Great. So that's all about that automation, the scalability, and that's a massive market because a lot of South Africans are lazy, and they kind of feel that they need what we call a lead time. So that since the time when someone books, they now need to go and prepare, they need to get ready, and that's money you're leaving on the table. And there's no ways that I'm going to know that I'm leaving money on the table and not do something about it. So the whole purpose actually of that advanced course was all around how do we set this up through strong automation systems and the messaging, the check-in instructions, the photographs of how to check in, all those things. The cleaners get notified. All those things need to be done so that you can sleep and still get someone booking, and you wake up in the morning saying, oh, wow, okay, someone booked last night, they moved in and they're happy, and it all works really well. So a good insight there. And I do hear you when you talk about your villa and you're looking at the analytics. But when you're talking about double, we're not talking about 5,000 rand, 6,000 rand. When you're talking about this market you're looking to understand, it's a unique market. And in Cape Town, there are a lot of those, but it's a market, just so that people listening can get a sense that we're talking, closer to 20 to 40,000 rand a night that you are charging, correct? So just to put into context that when you say, some nights are, in the same month you can charge double, it's because of this specific niche luxury villa market that you're talking about.
Yeah, that's correct. So during the peak periods, we charge around about 25,000 all the way up to 40,000 rand a night. And now the discounted winter rate, is looking to be around about 8 to 10,000. But some nights I'm still managing to charge 16 to 20,000 rand a night, and I just need to understand why that is, and how to capitalize on that.
Yep. Yeah, good. I have actually some thoughts about that as well, because I've noticed certain things similar to you in that. So definitely going to share those with you the next time we chat. So that's just the feedback from Bruce and Ridwan around where they see the current trends. I do have the odd question coming through. So Jaco, I definitely see that. We're going to tap into your question because we're leading into that. I just want to remind people that for me, what I want to focus on at this point and just get other people's last comments on this is, well, how do we use what we're doing in Airbnb in the short-term letting space to fire our bosses? In other words, can we replace our income in such a way that we can leave our salary jobs and it is replaced through our short-term letting income and profits? And I would like for us just to unpack it and just to see how that goes. So I'm definitely going to ask Ridwan and Bruce these questions. Ridwan, I'm actually going to start with you around this, because when you first did the Airbnb course that is on the Saffron platform, and you took this leap of faith at that point, which is, what are you going to start with and do? There's a limited amount of funds that were available. And maybe in your sharing, just put that into context, like where were you a year and a half, 2 years ago? And what have you built now? I mean, we're talking about luxury villas of 35 million rand. We're talking about prepaying rent of up to 2 million rand as a deposit to someone to rent their place. This is very different to, man, how am I going to earn 5 grand a month? So perhaps share with us, like where you started and how you built that. And I'm also wanting to bring in, just so I can plant this for people to hear, is it's not just about the Airbnb. You have now invested in different properties, student housing, with some of the income that you got from Airbnb. You've grown that portfolio. You're now opening up a different business to also coincide with what you're doing. You actually are a full-on multidisciplinary business person now, and it started because you said, I want to create financial freedom and do this for my family, for yourself, because you've got big aspirations. So update us on where you started, how you got to where you are. You've got multiple properties at the moment, and how is that tying in to you creating this financial freedom that we so aspire to?
Okay, yeah. So I'm a bit different to most people, because I've always been my own boss. So I've never wanted to fire the boss, as some of you listening may want to do. But yes, Robin is right. I started at a very different place to where I am now. I started in about September, October of 2020. So that was during lockdown. And I, being an entrepreneur my whole life, my first business was really struggling during this time, and I had to make another way. So we started with the Airbnb course, got coaching, and that's where it all started, and where my life changed at that point. I did the course in about a weekend or so, and then in that next week I secured my first Airbnb property. And at that stage, it was leveraging the last little cash that I had available, using credit cards and things like that to get the linen paid for, and whatever it was that I needed to get done, and start with that first Airbnb. And it looked like we should make about 10 to 15,000 rand profit per month on that Airbnb, and that was what we needed at that stage. And then from there, it's about 2.5 years later, and I've scaled drastically from there. I learned the foundations at that point, and then had a lot of learnings through there. We went from one to about 15 Airbnbs now, including an Airbnb in Dubai as well. So that's diversified international income, and it's just been a huge change in mindset as well. And then, as Robin mentioned, with that income earned from Airbnb, I started my first student accommodation at the end of 2021, and we just bought another property now, converting it into student accommodation, and that's the strategy that I've been following. And it's just something that Robin's spoken about in terms of, you're replacing your income, you're wanting to fire your boss, get more time off, and take control of your financial freedom and your time freedom. Something that I will say for me that has changed is at the different stages and levels, I've had to readjust my goals because of the possibility that the Airbnb income brings you. You start out maybe wanting to earn 25 or 50,000 rand a month, and then that goal increases when you see the possibility of the income that it brings in. So my goals have changed, from that, drastically up from 50, 100, 200,000 rand, and more. And it's not from wanting more money and the greed of wanting money. It's more about seeing the possibilities and what you can actually achieve using these strategies. It really is eye opening.
Yep. I had someone who I was speaking to this morning who said that he would like to have from his property portfolio 50,000 Rand within the next 5 to 10 years. And I was like, well, that could be like within a couple of months. If you align it right and do it, it's really is possible for that to happen. And again, it just shows that how we set out in this world is very limiting, which is exactly why we're having this conversation, because I want people watching this to see that there are alternative routes than the traditional ones that we've got, while mitigating the risk, right? We don't want to go out there and say, throw all your money and spend everything you've got and take big risk. If anything, that I'm very risk averse, and why I like, especially the rent to rent model that you're talking about now, is I'm going to rent a unit from a landlord and I'm going to list it on Airbnb and make money and still pay rent to the landlord, but make and keep the extra money that I'm generating. That can be incredibly risk free, because it's not my property and I have a lease which keeps it legally bound, but there's a whole lot of risk that we're mitigating. And you've obviously built a large portfolio, and now you're converting that into actual assets by buying property. And what people don't understand is, you're actually going to banks and saying, look at my Airbnb income, and you structure that in such a way that they can understand it. And now you're tapping into what the traditional models can do, which is actually give you really great assets. So, 100%. Anything else around what you feel about this aspect of financial freedom, which people are striving for, and what the individuals out there who are saying, listen, this just can't be possible? I mean, they say, yeah, Ridwan, you're great. You were lucky. Like, was this luck?
No, it's definitely not luck. It's about working smart, and it's easier than you think. I will say this, and I say this to everyone. The main thing is that you just start. Starting is the most important thing. You've got the tools and the resources at your hand here. We've got the experts on today's panel to ask you questions to. You've got the courses and the coaches that you can make use of. And I will say this: financial freedom, and more so time freedom, is a very, I want to say, liberating thing. Being able to do whatever you want whenever you want is a great thing, and something that I'd hope for everyone to experience in their lifetime. Right, not having to worry about going to work at a certain hour, being able to take a trip whenever you want to. It comes with its challenges, as we know, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Okay, so while you're still here, it looks like Bruce might have just disappeared from a moment. We don't see his camera anymore. I have a question for you, which has come up on the chat, Ridwan. So I'm going to place it there. So you're actually an expert in starting new Airbnbs. I mean, this morning we were chatting and you're like, oh, Robin, yeah, I've got this Airbnb that I'm going to take occupation of in like a couple of weeks, and this one I'm working on, and we'll see if that goes. So how would you answer this question about, well, I want to get started, but I need to make some calculations, assuming that it's not this high-end villa where someone's asking you to pay 2 million Rand upfront as an annual rent upfront amount. what kind of capital would you say for a good starting position, and how long would it take to get it back? And you could probably actually refer to any of yours that you've got. Like, what did it take to start it, and how did you get it back?
Right. So you something interesting though. The villa actually recouped my cash a lot quicker than the other properties. And that was surprising for me because the amount of money that went into it. Regardless, the typical input capital required. So you usually, if you can negotiate well, you'd need the first only 1 month deposit, rental deposit, and the rental upfront, and then you need. If you are clever and you find a fully furnished property, you won't need much furniture. You usually just need some extra decorative pieces and some extra cutlery, crockery, things like that, and then your linen. So it really depends on the property and also the rental that you are looking at. Obviously, if you take a 15,000 rand property, the rental deposit plus the first month's rent is 30,000. But if you've got a 50,000 rand property, the first month deposit plus the first rental is 100,000 rand, so that's very different. However, I've seen, if you analyze the properties correctly, I usually make, usually depending on the time of the year as well. If you've got seasonality, usually takes about 3 to 6 months to recoup that. And then we've got different cases, like with my luxury villa, where in 5 months I had already recouped the entire year's expenses. So that's not just the rental, that's the complete running costs of the villa. So that means the next 7 months is pure profit for me. And that's what I've typically found. If I can get within that 6 month period to recoup all the costs, including the capital outlay, and then have the next 6 months profit, that's usually what I find. And now I've just spoken to Robin about this. I know he does this already, and I'm going to move towards this as well, is renting my linen. And this drastically decreases the upfront starting cost, because if you've got a 3, 4, 5 bedroom property, purchasing the amount of linen that you require for that um, becomes a huge capital outlay, versus renting your linen and having it as an operations expense going forward. That reduces the amount and actually makes it even easier for you to start your Airbnb business.
So a couple of really interesting things there. I mean, you're now talking about renting linen and a whole lot of other things. And from our side, we're obviously wanting to mitigate the risk. Now, what's actually interesting about this is you significantly expanded your portfolio, Ridwan, not by just coming up with the capital that we're talking about. And even though we're sharing that it's not a lot of capital necessarily, like 1 month's rent or perhaps a deposit as well, maybe some linen that you need to buy, you actually went out and you even raised those funds and paid a good interest on the borrowing of those funds from friends and families and actually strangers. You went and actually found money. So in your case, it actually is true that it can be done with none of your own money, correct?
No, that's 100% correct. I To scale, going from one property to 7 to 15 properties is it's it takes a lot of capital in certain instances, depending on what it is that you need to do. And what I did is I went out and I found investors. I put together a deal pack and I pitched the deal to them, and I ensured that the returns were good, so that I could offer a good return to everyone. And my investors that I work with were receiving 15 to 20% return on their capital, and they were very happy with that. I even had a recent deal come up where I was able to offer 25% return to the investors that came on board. And that's because the deals that I was finding, were generating between 40 to 50% return. So if I'm able to get 20% and pay the investors 20%, I'm getting a 20% return without having to put in any of my own money, which in effect is actually an infinite ROI if you're not putting any
Correct.
of your own capital in.
Correct. Yeah. And Ridwan, I think I heard your daughter in the background there as well. So that's part of it, right? I mean, firing your boss is about you working in your own space in your time. And I know for you, actually, one of the big drivers was spending time with your family. So the fact that we can sometimes hear your daughter in the background, that is actually a great testament to what you've created. So make no mistake, it's not that it's a distraction. It's actually an acknowledgement. I know it's public holiday today, but You went with your family to Dubai. You took them all there for a couple of months. You take weekends to go to the spa as well with your family. So this is what we're talking about. This isn't about how to create an office around you. It's to create a family life that's really important. So Ridwan, thanks so much for coming on. We know you need to log off and move somewhere else. So thanks very much. I do see that we've got Bruce, and I'm going to also ask Bruce a whole lot of questions around where he's got. So Ridwan, thanks very much. Great to see you. Until next time. Talking about luck, just a bit moment, I asked Ridwan if he's lucky. So Bruce, I want to ask you about luck. If your journey into Airbnb is luck, because for some people it appears that they can just make easy decisions, get something going, start, and just make it happen. And you have taken a different route. You've chosen actually to start your Airbnb away from where you are in a different province, and set that up from that perspective and manage it going from that route. So your turn to share where you started, how you started, what made you actually decide I want to do something different. Because I know in our conversations that we've been having, you've already got property that you had already bought, but you were looking for something different. And I'll probably assume that because it's also going to take you too long to get where you want to get to. And at some point, the bank's going to turn around and say to you, hey, Bruce, you're already maxed out on your affordability because you've got all these other properties. And you're going to say, well, now what am I going to do? How am I going to expand my portfolio? Until you realize, hey, maybe in the short-term letting, I can do that rent-to-rent strategy and I can grow this and make that work. And please do tell us if you make more cash flow, like in your pocket that you keep on your Airbnbs than you do in your traditional property investing at this point. Would love to hear that differentiation. So over to you, Bruce. Tell us how lucky you are.
So it's an interesting topic to unpack though, Robin. I don't know whether I'd really refer to it as luck. So a lot of effort goes into these sort of things. So research, setup, automation, all of those things. So yeah, you're right. I live in Johannesburg and my unit, like I've already said, is in KZN. So quite far away. You have some challenges with actually getting your viewings done, finding your apartments, things like that. So by no measure luck. So everything that's worthwhile requires a little bit of hard work and skills, I suppose, and taking advantage of that. So yeah, my journey with Airbnb actually started because I was trying to add some additional properties to my portfolio. So I was looking for some multi-lets at that point, and things just really weren't working out well for me. So I decided to do the Airbnb course. And I think I've mentioned before that when I started watching it, I actually watched it all in one sitting. I was so intrigued. And then I just decided that I was going to start it immediately. So, that launched my journey. I think I did the Airbnb course in March of last year. And in April, I was already down in KZN looking for units there. And my listing went live on the 1st of June. During the floods that they had, just by the way, as well. So negotiating that as well. So yes, it's been really interesting. Like you said, I do have some property as well. And most definitely my Airbnb makes a lot more cash than my portfolio, which is one of the nice things. And Ridwan was talking about it now as well, where he mentioned that cash can be used to grow your portfolio. So people have different strategies that they apply. So yes, you're talking about firing your boss and how that's possible and how that income can be used for stuff like that. But I think that if you're savvy, that income can also be used to grow your portfolio, almost giving you a double whammy. So keeping your cash flow from your short-term rental plus the cash flow from your additional properties. So it definitely is a great strategy to compound growth, right? So
yep. And so in your case, if we think about this and say, okay, so we could possibly be getting, Ridwan had mentioned, I remember my first Airbnb way back. I think we were generating at that point, the first one was like between 5,000 and 10,000 Rand profit per month over the year. And then we got way smarter. We realized, hey, instead of buying 70,000 Rands worth of furniture up front, why don't we go rent a furnished apartment? probably because some Airbnb person didn't know how to do it correctly because they hadn't done the course, obviously. And then they said, that's it, I just want someone to be a long-term tenant. And I said, thank you very much, I'll be a long-term tenant, and give me permission, please. So it's all legit and legal. Give me permission to also rent it listed on Airbnb. And then it suddenly went to 50. And then we multiplied that by 2 and 3. And suddenly we were getting 50, 60, 70,000 Rand income after expenses to make this work. So in your case, if you could see at what this has opened up for you, and let's say that you had wanted to leave your work, or let's just call it some hypothetical person out there says, well, they want to replace their salary. Like, how quickly do you think someone could do that? Are we talking months? Are we talking years?
So the barriers for entry here are very, very low, though, Robin. That depends on your skill set and how you're negotiating with your landlord. So if you're able to get in front of the right people, procure the right type of property where you don't have to make a massive capital outlay for your furniture, then you're basically looking at most times only deposit. So entry costs are really low, easily recovered. And if you're talking about the average South African salary, with tax being factored into your Airbnb income, you could quite easily replace your income with 2 Airbnb units already. And the recovery of that cost could almost be within the same month if you're talking about deposits. So definitely quite easy. A seasonal trend should also be kept in mind, though. There are low seasons and high seasons, but if you average it out over a year, then quite easily 2 units to replace your income.
Yep. So, I mean, that's crazy. We're talking about someone who might have studied for years,
yes,
have worked their way up some kind of a ladder, are working 8 to 5s or whatever it is with extra hours. I don't know what sometimes people are doing to make things work. And you're telling me that within a short period of time, between maybe 6 months or even less for some people, we know that is possible, to maybe a year, you can actually, without gaining a lot of like academic expertise, you can replace an income. It really is crazy when you start to think of that. But that's what I'm hearing, correct?
Yep, that's right. But it's like Ridwan said, I mean, these things open up new possibilities for you. It's not, so the cash flow is good, yes. Using that money to invest in other things is also good, yes, but it creates so many more possibilities than just that. I think anybody who starts off with a goal like that will very soon realize that it could be a lot more than they think it can be.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's probably also a good point is, we're not talking about greed here. So if you've heard any of my conversations or my videos, and I know, Bruce, we've chatted about this as a good strategy to keep going forward, is, greed is a killer of Airbnb. When you start deviating from the strategies that I share and talk about in the course, where we start changing how that paradigm works, then there's a risk that greed starts actually negatively impacting the actual person who is theirs. And you can relate to that to somewhere, right? When you're getting this money, you think like, this is so easy. I want to increase the pricing, and then you start deviating from this thing that we call the startup strategy, and and all those things that I mentioned in the course about how to do this successfully is where then people start risking, which is, I guess, why we also know out there a lot of South Africans aren't making it work, because they don't know what they're doing. They don't have that correct strategy.
Yep. I think that for me as well, whenever I'm doing tweaking, I'm always returning back to the basics of the course again and reviewing them and like action that so that you can just get back on track again. So definitely when that greed does start to set in, or you start veering off of the track because you've gone too far, back to basics and you're ready to go again.
Okay. So Bruce, I've got a question for you that's come up kind of partly overlaid over what was there, but it's a good one that you can ask as well. Here it is. Question: is it better to outsource the housekeeping services or to insource?
So my immediate answer on this would be to outsource, unless you plan on dealing with cleaners yourself and not having any recourse when your guest arrives and something has to be done and you're having to deal with it. most definitely outsource. That's going to save you a lot of headaches. Your outsourced cleaners, if you're at a distance like I am, also most times will take care of a lot of additional things that you require. So I definitely would not do in-sourced.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, Bruce is kind of sharing what I've already shared, and you'll hear it in the course as well, that I reiterate again and again. You may have a tendency to say, hey, I have a domestic cleaner who can just pop along and clean it. And I'm like, be so careful of falling into the trap of that, because what happens if your domestic isn't there that day, or calls in sick, or is late, or their child can't work and can't come in? The number of days that I have spent scrubbing toilets, cleaning showers, ironing linen is insane, because that's partly what we thought would work for us. We would save money. It doesn't. Certainly not when you're expanding your portfolio. You want someone that you can hold accountable, who basically, you have a contract that says if you do not do this, there's penalties, that if you don't perform, or if someone doesn't come in, that's not my business. You are the person then that needs to come in and do the ironing and sort the stuff out. So very much so. Even Ridwan mentioned it, Bruce, as well. And unfortunately, this isn't something that's done nationally, is I now rent my linen. And that means that it gets delivered and it gets taken away, and they professionally launder it, clean it, and it's delivered. So I know that I'm getting good hotel quality linen that is professionally done. Just still very different to me buying the linen and then sending it off to a laundry. That's a different matter. I'm actually doing that all in one go now, and I'm actually realizing the pricing is pretty similar. So I know it's not done nationally yet, but again, I'm looking to see how can I outsource the stuff that I don't, that are going to actually hold me back from that expansion and making that work.
It's about simplification. When you want to scale, simplification and automation is what's going to get you there. So the less you have to manage, the easier that's going to be.
Yep, very much so. So I also just see one of the last comments before we finish off here. It says, let me just pull that up here. So Cape Town, Durban, that's just because those are the people who are here talking. Bloemfontein, in terms of B&B strategy, that I'm not sure. And I do know that there are a couple of people who are doing Airbnb who've done the course in the Bloemfontein area. We know people doing PE, further into KZN, quite a lot in the Gauteng area, KZN, Pretoria, we've got a whole lot. Actually, in the course, I take you around to show some of those students who have turned their properties into separate roomed Airbnbs, and we're doing super successful. We've got people transforming multi-lets, traditional multi-lets, into Airbnbs as well in the same property. So separate units now, not just a room, a self-contained unit that they turn into Airbnbs. So a wide range of people doing things, all based on the same fundamentals of what we shared in the course. So very much that's there. Bruce, I've got another question that just came through directly to you.
Yeah. I just want to add to this Bloemfontein strategy situation. If there are actually people that are doing Airbnb in Bloemfontein, surely there has to be a market. So my recommendation would be to do your research and your due diligence. So I mean, there are travelers that go to Bloemfontein. So do your research and see if it works out. That's what we do with other areas as well.
Yep. Bruce highlights on one of the things in the course there that says just because there are lots of other Airbnbs in the area doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It means there must be a demand. Otherwise, those people would all have gone out of business. Yes. All you need to do is to make sure you're better than them. Because if you're better than them, you will get the market share of what's going on. That has been my philosophy. And I'll promise you, if you look at how many Airbnbs are in Cape Town and around the areas I invest in, you would just give up and go home. But I know that I still come listed on the top page, often at the top there. I'm doing really well. You know, Bruce talked about occupancy rates. I think the night before last, that's right, night before last was the first night this whole year I had an open night with no one there. The first night. So I'm and that frustrates me. I want 100% occupancy throughout the whole year. Make no mistake, I'm like, you know, I want this to be there. But that was the first time, and we're now nearly into May. So that just shows that the strategies we're doing work. Where all these other people are there, they're like, yeah, I get maybe 30% occupancy rates. I'm like, okay, you guys aren't doing it correctly. Or let me put it this way, you could be doing it so much better. Don't want to tell them they're doing it correctly. They could be doing it so much better. And that's what we're looking at. Yeah. Bruce, a question just specific to your area. Here it is. So what are your thoughts on the beaches being closed in the KZN when they were closed, and due to, I think, was a lot of the pollution and just the, did you see impact in your numbers?
So for me, being on the north coast, I'm closer to Belito side, so I was never really impacted by the sewage spills that caused the beaches to be closed. I know that Umhlanga had an issue, and that's neighboring on me, but there's 30 kilometers difference between us. So the immediate answer is that yes, possibly it did have some very small impact, but the people were so geared to check out the water tests already, know where those beaches were. So whatever impact was there, the guests had already known before and made alternative arrangements. So I was never impacted by cancellations or people that wanted refunds because they couldn't swim in the beach, because that wasn't really an issue for me. That being said, I think that Andrew might be talking about South Coast, which is not in my area. I know they have some closed beaches, some open, and that's a periodic issue. So I definitely see that it would obviously impact your rates. People go to KZN for the beach, most definitely. And if they can't do that, I do think that that would impact your occupancy and profit.
Yep, cool. Bruce, any last comments before I wrap it up and just complete this? And I think, maybe I'll leave you with one thing. I was thinking of ending it on this myself, but I'll hear your thoughts on this. As I introduced you coming into this conversation saying, so, luck, aren't you lucky? But actually, there's only one element of luck that I wish upon everyone, and that is you're lucky if you take action. Now, it's the one characteristic is taking action. You mentioned it. If you you heard Ridwan. He said, I'm doing this. He also, in a week, he'd done the course, got his first property. He was on his route. You said you sat down, got it, sorted it out. Very quickly, you found your property. And it's because of action, not because you waited or hoped or kept just, scrolling and hoping. You took action. So what is your comment as we finish off about this concept of luck? And if someone has the ability to take action, then for me, that's a lucky trait, but it will lead to luck happening for you as well.
I agree 100% with that, Robin. So any sort of momentum or progression that you want to have is directly linked to whatever action and energy you're putting into it. So if you really want to do it, just go out and do it. Take action, do your research, skill yourself, obviously, but it's not going to land in your lap. It's not going to be that kind of luck.
Cool. Bruce, thanks very much. And I'm sure people will also see and gain all the knowledge from you, because you worked with me on the booking.com section. You've had so much success with the booking.com. So in the advanced Airbnb course, there's a whole section we've just added in the last 2 weeks, which is all around the booking.com. And I basically grilled Bruce and said, Bruce, how did you get your success? What did you do? What were the strategies you've used? What were the plans you put in place? Because booking.com is a nightmare of all these different things. You share all that knowledge and information, and then I just took that and expanded of it, and now that's ready for everyone to know and to use those same strategies that we've dominated in Airbnb. You can now do that in booking.com. From your side, booking.com, Airbnb, I'm not asking which is your preference, because they both have their pros and cons, but maybe your comments about how they both are incredible vehicles to boost your income and your occupancy rates.
Yep. So I think I've mentioned this in a previous chat that we've had as well, that all principles remain the same. And if you do the fundamentals of the course, those things have to be applied to your booking.com listing as well. So there's no getting away from that. In terms of the vehicles, both of them are really good. I've seen improvements on both sides, because yes, booking.com can sometimes be a very difficult vehicle to navigate. But once you've got it under wraps, it really is a phenomenal tool to use to drive your business, because that's what your Airbnb should be. So both have their pros and cons. I do like booking.com. A lot of my business comes from there. I do like Airbnb as well. I do get good business from there. So
cool. Bruce, thanks so much. And as I said, people, I'm sure, are going to see you on the Airbnb course and all the knowledge that you've shared. So thanks very much for being on here today. And that then brings us to the end of our conversation today. And I think my leaving comment is, I wish you luck. And the luck in the context of you having that characteristic of taking action, whatever that looks like, going out there, doing your research, checking to see what is possible. There's so much out there. You've heard it today from the experts who've done it. And I love that comment, which is the people who complain that something can't be done mustn't stop those from who are already doing it. And today I wanted these two people, Bruce and Ridwan, just to convey that whether you have a belief that it can't be done, whether you're saying, no, I'm locked into this and I can only use property, and maybe in 5 years' time I can get some extra cash, and maybe in 20 years' time I'll retire. They've just told you and proven to you that that is false. It can be done, and they are doing it. So my parting comments again are, good luck, take action, and as always, we'll see you